Homeschoolers are so antisocial.
And they're so weird. Do they even do anything all day?
Are their parents even qualified to teach?
Homeschooling is like not even really school.
Let's talk about all these misconceptions and so many more. Hi ladies, and welcome back to our channel. Let's dive in a little more into homeschooling for those of you that are actually considering it for the next school year.
Are there things that you've heard that are just making you hesitant when it comes to homeschooling? We're going to talk about some of those misconceptions today and try to debunk them for you. These are the top 10 fears we've heard from potential homeschooling moms.
And I am going to pull out my teaching card because I did teach high school for plenty of years before becoming a stay-at-home mom. So I feel like I was able to see the spectrum from the schooling side.
So the number one thing across the board that we've heard is that homeschooled kids are antisocial or they just don't socialize. I think this is like the farthest thing from the truth.
If anything, they're actually more mature and able to keep a conversation with tons of adults because they actually talk to adults more than they do with kids.
And with the culture nowadays, with kids just on their phones, even in school, and just talking through screens, I feel like kids who are homeschooled probably get even more face-to-face, like social time than kids in school do.
Especially now with COVID too.
So when you're homeschooling, your kid might not be in a classroom setting all day, but because when you're homeschooling one kid, you can get done school in maybe like 2 or 3 hours because you're just focusing on that one child. You have so much more time to sign them up for more things. So they could be involved in different church groups or volunteer groups or in different play groups or co-ops or community sports. There's literally so many ways to get them out there and get them talking to people and socializing and just having fun with other kids.
I do want to add that there probably can be kids that are antisocial, but we see that in the public school and private schools. We see it all around. I think it really comes down to the environment that the child is in. If a child is an introvert or really struggling to talk to other people, are you practicing with them as a parent to make sure that they're comfortable in those situations? Are you actually doing, I think of mock interviews before we actually went into our field. Are you doing those little mock interviews with your 5-year-old? What do you do when you meet a friend? What do you say to them? Like practicing with them to make sure that they are comfortable in all environments. Number 2, that homeschooling is not a proper education.
Homeschooling is actually more beneficial for your child because you can work at their pace. In public school, it's really common for kids to get left behind. If they can't understand something, the teacher can't just spend one-on-one time with them all day trying to teach it to them. So they have to move ahead to cater to all the other kids in the classroom. And if you're home with your kid, you can focus on the things that they need help with, and then you can move on if they need to move on faster. And there's also so many curricula out there to choose from. And research actually shows that homeschooled kids tend to score higher on the standardized state test than the general population.
And it's probably because of all the one-on-one time. I will tell you that a lot of time when a student falls behind or is struggling, the tutoring is what helps them get more caught up because they get the one-on-one time and the tutor is able to fill in those gaps of what they're missing and what they're struggling with, which a classroom teacher really struggles to do that with so many kids in the classroom.
Number 3, homeschoolers don't really do anything all day. It's true that a homeschool day looks much different than a public school day, but that's okay. The reason why the length of school is so much shorter is because you're only focusing on one kid, so there's not time where you're trying to go from kid to catch up with everyone and make sure that everyone is doing what they're supposed to do. As soon as you're done with the subject, you can just move on.
Of course it's going to look different. We have a child who's like a 2 or 3-year-old in the same room as potentially a 6th or 7th grader and then everyone in between. I think it looks closer to what a schoolhouse used to look like than it does to a modern classroom. Number 4, the fear that your child cannot participate in extracurricular activities or sports.
So at least where we live, I know there's a local group of moms that organizes like a homeschooling like sports team and like sports leagues and stuff, so you can sign up your kids for that. There's usually neighborhood sports teams we also have out here where the local schools, some of them allow you to sign up your kids at the school for whatever extracurricular activities or sports that they offer.
I've heard that a lot. Unfortunately, I called our old school district and the current one and both said no. But I was super excited about that to actually have them join like a local team. But guys, keep in mind there's tons of activities through your local district. So just reach out and see what's around you.
Unless you live in a rural area, there's definitely options out there for you. And also another option is to look into your local Christian school. I know the one out here where we live, they do offer this like program where you can sign your kids up for like a math class with them. So it would go on for like one class a day, and then you can also sign them up for specific sports or for art class. And so that's always an option too.
Which leads to number 5, having the fear of doing all of this alone.
There are so many resources out there for homeschooling parents. Our libraries are amazing. They carry different curriculum out there. Oftentimes I can ask them to like buy one so I can check it out if they don't already have it. And I know not all libraries do this, but it's definitely worth looking into. Ours even offers like telescopes and microscopes you can borrow. It is seriously awesome.
and look into your local library to see if they have a homeschooling program. For us, they have all those options, and they also have the no late fees, which I absolutely love, because when winter comes and we can't get out there to return the books on time, there's no fee, and so definitely look into to see what they have to offer to homeschooling families. There are also tons of co-ops out there, and basically what it is, it's different homeschooling families will come together, and you can either drop off your kids, stay with your child, depending on what they offer, but there are educational co-ops where these families meet together and the students learn different subjects together, and there's also sport co-ops where, again, the students are coming together to play different sports. And so there's tons of different co-ops out there. You just have to look to see which ones are close and which ones you want to actually be a part of. There's even ones where you drop off the child, some are full days, some are half days, and they get to choose their own classes. So it'll be like extracurricular activities that they could choose from. Instead of the typical math and language arts, they'll cover things that you could do unit studies for, possibly history or science, or even fun things like cooking and sewing, and just lots of different options out there. So look into it.
There's also fun co-ops like playgroup co-ops or co-ops specifically just to do field trips together, so the possibilities are literally endless.
There is one specific one that is national. It's called Wild and Free, and the idea is to make sure that our children are out in nature enough. So they'll do tons of outdoor field trips, whether it's a hike or a different park that they meet at, that they like explore the different like things in nature. But it's a really neat co-op to get you outside.
The next misconception is that parents are not qualified to teach.
And the truth is, when you actually get a teaching degree, they don't actually teach you how to teach the material. They actually just teach you classroom management and how to actually teach things to a classroom, like the different techniques, like group these kids this way and use this technique. But you're not actually taught the material to reteach it to them. So that was mind-blowing to me. I thought I'm going to college to relearn what I'm going to teach, and in reality, you're teaching it to yourself or learning it from a coworker if you don't know the concept. And then you're going in and teaching it to the kids. So as a parent, you are more than qualified to teach it, especially since tons of teacher manuals actually tell you what to say, how to teach it, what hands-on activities the child can use. Some of them are even really scripted, and so it's super easy. If that's your concern, then just choose one of the curriculums that's scripted and you just read it to the child. You'll get more comfortable as you get further and further into teaching your child.
And as we mentioned before, there's so many resources out there to help you. If you feel like you're lacking in a certain subject, like I, for example, am horrible at math, you can partner with your local charter or Christian school and see if you can just have your kids take math classes there, or find a co-op that includes math in their schedule.
Or you can even tag along with another family. Like I know I'm obviously stronger at math since I taught math, and I have a family who she's really strong in science, and so we've been talking about like me potentially teaching the kids part of their math, especially concepts that she might be struggling with. And since I'm not head over heels for science, I'd be more than happy to allow her actually teach the science unit studies. And so you could also tag team with somebody. It doesn't necessarily mean that you meet every day, but you can meet once a week and like fill in the gaps. You're kind of like tutoring the kids, helping them with math, while the other parent can actually take care of the science aspect.
Number 7, your homeschoolers will miss out on the school experience.
And this was one of my biggest concerns because I actually really enjoyed schooling growing up. But in reality, non-homeschoolers are missing out on what we get to take advantage of, like the flexibility or the things that they learn that I, at 35, am learning now, and my kids are younger and they're learning it out. Like starting a business or working with a local business to get something done, like a charity thing. There's so many opportunities out there. So I actually have gotten over it once I saw my kids have these amazing experiences of their own at such a young age.
And again, I know we've said this like multiple times, but there's ways you can fill in this gap, like sign them up for the field trip co-op or sign them up for different sports or extracurricular activities so they still get these social experiences with the other kids.
You know what they are missing out on? They will totally miss out on being bullied, being left to sit alone in the lunchroom, being called bossy by my teacher, being called talkative by my teacher in her own language. Like, how rude is that? I was in 3rd grade. Let's remember the horrible experiences that they could also actually avoid.
So this one is kind of true. Yes, they will miss out on the school experience, but if you think about what are like the parts of the school experience that you missed growing up and that were really positive, you can still give those to your children.
Like being with friends. That was one of my favorites. I'm an extrovert. I loved hanging out with the friends, and they can still have that now.
One of my favorite experiences in school is going on field trips, and as a homeschooler, you actually have more opportunities to go on field trips because you can take your kids on as many field trips as you want, and if you want them to have friends on those field trips, just reach out to other homeschooling families in the area. Just set that up ahead of time, and your kids can have more field trips than you had growing up.
So think about your positive experiences and try to actually give that to your child, because I do think it's really easy to reproduce at home.
Our next homeschooling myth is that it is difficult for homeschoolers to get into college, and this cannot be further from the truth.
Actually, colleges are actively trying to recruit homeschoolers. It's probably because of the way that they score, that they are scoring higher, and a lot of the projects that they're doing or involvement in their high school is just different than what you experience in an actual school. Like I said, there's a lot of homeschoolers who have started their own business, especially by high school, and so they just get these life experiences that other kids may not have.
It's actually pretty common for homeschool kids to interview pretty well. If you have a kid who's going to a classroom setting where they're just with a bunch of other kids their age, they don't get that much interaction with older adults. So it's more unusual for them to have to learn how to speak to an adult. So generally homeschoolers are just more comfortable, and so the interview process goes a little bit easier for them.
Also, a homeschooler needs to learn how to become more independent as they get into the older grades. And so a parent can actually guide them through what they're doing, but it's really their responsibility to get things completed as they get into high school. So by the time they're ready to apply for college, what happens is the student is very independent at this point, and so even the expectations from the college is just much more manageable for a child who actually was homeschooled and has been doing a lot of things on their own by then.
Research actually shows that homeschoolers go to and succeed at college at an equal to or higher rate than the general population.
Number 9, this is actually one of my favorite ones. People labeling homeschoolers as weird or sheltered. The reason I actually think this is kind of comical is because you're labeling a kid weird, and in reality we're all weird in our own sense. Like, you don't meet somebody unless they're like you, then you don't think they're weird. But you're weird, let me tell you that. And I'm weird and she's weird, and we're all different in our own ways. So I think we use this term as weird, but in reality everybody's just different. That's what it comes down to. In terms of being sheltered, I actually think it really depends on the openness of the parents. If the parents are super open, then the child will know way more than a lot of kids their age. At the same time, a non-homeschooling family might be shocked that my child doesn't know whatever the latest movie is that came out, but they definitely know how a business gets started. So there are definitely advantages to both. It's just a matter of how much you want to expose them and to what. My child knows how to open a bank account, while again, they don't know the latest trend that's out on some social media.
It's kind of nice in a sense to be able to control what your kids are exposed to and when. And it's nice to be able to expose them to it yourself while you're in their presence, so you can talk about these things instead of them learning about it from a classmate and having a totally wrong perspective on it. And so yeah, they may be sheltered in a sense, but in my opinion, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And also for the weird thing, yeah, your kids may not be doing what all the other kids are doing, so they may be weird in the sense that they're different, but I actually don't think that's a bad thing either.
Because if your child chooses to make a wise decision versus a poor decision, that's a good thing. They don't have to give into peer pressure either.
And also with being weird and not wanting to be like everybody else, they feel less of a need to go with the crowd. And again, I don't think that's a bad thing, because if the crowd is into something that's harmful or just not good, I'm fine with my kid not going along with the crowd.
Yes,
or feeling
100%.
pressured to do that. Last myth is that you need a homeschool room to homeschool. You can homeschool anywhere. You can homeschool in the backyard, you can homeschool in your bed, you can homeschool on the couch. It's nice to have a homeschool space and have a dedicated place for everybody to work and get in the zone, but you don't need it.
100%. Kitchen table is a great place. I know a lot of people that do school on the couch. The teacher in me doesn't allow me, but I can tell you that the few times that they were sick and we just ended up doing school on the couch, we survived and it was fine.
And I like being comfy and cozy, so my daughter's only 5, so we're doing kindergarten together, and I will say we are getting a homeschool room this year. I finally convinced my husband to let me take over our formal living room area. But I love doing homeschool with her on the couch because we can snuggle while we do it, and it's just, I don't know, there's something special about just cuddling up together and doing school. It doesn't make it feel like school. Are there any other myths that you've heard about that we missed here? Because we'd love to hear them and we'd love to talk about them with you.
And debunk them for you.
If you haven't already, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you can see more of our homeschooling videos.
And don't forget to hit the big like. We really appreciate your support.